student school board representation. Welcome to the meeting. The first item up is going to be a review of the annual report. Superintendent Law.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, each study session in September, the board has a chance to preview the annual report that the district prints and shares with the community, summarizing the previous year. Tonight, Executive Director of Communications, Dr. Jackie Getty, is going to give you a chance to run through that report and summarize what's in that report, gather any feedback before we formally approve that report in October. Dr. Getty.
Thank you, Superintendent Law, Mr. Chair, members of the board. We sent you a draft in the board report last Friday that was incomplete, so you have a complete draft that's in front of you today, and that's the draft that we're going to be looking through. We'll walk through the entire thing. It still isn't ready to go to print. We'll go through several rounds of copy editing. That said, if you have things that came out of the drafts that you saw and you see them still present here that you want us to address, definitely give me that information later, and we're happy to look through those. We love all the eyes on this. So just starting off, this image on the front is not the final cover. At the end of our presentation, we will give you 3 options to choose from, and we'll see what the majority wants for the cover options. So look forward to that. Turning the page, we have the table of contents, shows you everything that's in this report, and calls out a few of our features. We have the Class of 2025 celebration at US Bank Stadium for their commencement. The Points of Pride section that has four pages filled with all of the different student achievements and some staff achievements, and we highlighted there the girls varsity golf team that won its first state championship. And then we have a feature story, and Mary will be talking later about which feature story we selected. There's always hundreds to pick from, and we were really excited about being able to recognize this one. The next page, page 1, is the superintendent's message. And the superintendent's message leads out the annual report and really lays out for you what you're going to see ahead, what the viewer is going to see as they read through it, and really sets it up with this is what we do in support of the school board's goals. And we always love choosing a photo that we've taken with Superintendent Law, and it's honestly not difficult to find one that is just a very natural smile, so that was fun. Page 2 is the school board at commencement, and then underneath it, the school board goals from last year. And there's also a link to the goals for this year in case people want to see how the goals have shifted or changed over the years. But again, the 3 goals: excellence in well-being, connection and belonging, excellence in student learning and support, and excellence in leadership and organizational support. And those were the 3 goals last year. The other page that you're looking at there for page 3 is our Q&A with the school board chair, Patrick. Leo Halloran. Chair Leo Halloran was generous in answering our questions about how are we doing as a school district? How are we doing in achieving the goals? What do we still have work to do on? What are you proud of? What are we looking ahead to do? And is there anything else that you'd like to talk about? And so thank you, Chair Leo Halloran, for giving us that lens through the board's eyes. I'm going to hand it over to my esteemed colleague who wrote an awful lot of this report. This is Mary Cornelia. She is our communications specialist.
Thanks, Jackie. On pages 4 and 5, we feature some of our students' outstanding academic achievements from the 24-25 school year. We have our 28 National Merit semifinalists from the class of 2026. It's fun, it's a newer story we get to tell, but we include it in the report because it reflects the work that they did their junior year last year on the PSAT exam. And then we also have our 34 IB diploma graduates from the class of 2025, along with some details about what it takes to achieve that distinction. The next page, on page 5, you'll see the first of our student voice highlights. We have 2 students speaking about the impact of national caliber academic honors they earned last school year. As it is for the board and our district, elevating student voice in our storytelling is a core value we hold on our communications team. And so it's really, this is the first you'll see of several student spotlights throughout the report where students are speaking directly about the impact of programs and what they mean for their futures. Are there any questions on these pages? All right, flipping to 6 and 7, we have a snapshot of student academic achievement as measured by state and national exams. On page 6, we have the district's MCA reading and math scores, where you'll see we ranked first in math and third in reading among neighboring districts, as well as far above the state average. Dr. Amy Ledoux and Mr. Matt Breen will be presenting more about MCA results later this evening. We also have the NWEA results on the right, showing our students measuring above grade level right away in kindergarten, and then their academic progress accelerating during their time in Minnetonka. From 4th grade, where they're scoring early 7th grade in reading and early 8th grade in math, to by grade 7 measuring beyond 12th grade in reading and beyond 12th grade in math. Over on page 7, we have details about the AP exam results from 2025, which are truly outstanding. The fact that 89.9% of students who took exams scored a 3 or higher is incredible. That means that they've earned the potential for college credit. My favorite number on this page is in the small text at the bottom, the congratulations to the 966 students who've achieved AP Scholar Award status in 2025. That's a record-breaking number, and we'll be recognizing those students throughout this fall in our school board recognitions program. Any questions on those pages? All right. Then moving over to 8 and 9, we have a celebratory snapshot of the class of 2025's graduation. The page includes some stats like their 99% graduation rate, as well as their post-graduation plans, and then some incredible photos from the event. Throughout the report, all the photos you see are photos of Minnetonka students, and so it's one of our favorite parts of putting this production together, is getting to pair the information and storytelling with the visual elements. Our other highlight on this page is the student speaker, Toby Thomason, who's pictured. He was an intern in our department for the last 2 years. So as you've encountered our work in the last 2 years, you've encountered his work as well. Any questions on these pages? All right, back to Jackie.
Thank you, Mary. Our next 2 pages, 10 and 11, we thought it was really important to highlight the work of the Community Action for Student Education, or CASE committee. There was a lot of work the past year. That was a committee that really advocates for school funding, both for our district and statewide, really explaining to legislators how important it is to fully fund schools so that we can provide the kind of education our students deserve. And we had maybe a handful of people involved in the CASE committee a couple years ago, and then last year we had about 12, and this year we had over 100, close to 100, I think, including many of you here at the table. So we wanted to talk a little bit about that committee and about its work that it did throughout the session, really becoming educated about what it was that would really support schools the best. Superintendent Law really led that effort, giving a weekly update to that committee to talk about what are the things that are really important to Minnetonka, what's going to impact our students, and how can you reach out to legislators? What is the best way? And then we also had a day at the Capitol visit where several of the people on the committee came and spoke directly to legislators, and that was really impactful. And so the end result was that we really laid the foundation for future talks with legislators and really letting them know what is most impactful for our school districts, what can they impact. One of the things that we elevated for them was the local optional revenue. If they could increase the cap on that, we could go back to our voters, ask for more money there. We're currently capped at that, and that's something that they heard. It, in the end, didn't make it in the legislation, but it certainly made it farther than it ever has. So is there anything else you want to add on that, Superintendent Law?
No, I think that our group was impactful. I mean, that story reflects the fact that our community is engaged and excited. I anticipate it'll be more people this year, but that is a good summary of that.
Great, thank you. And we also in there invite people to become a part of it and show them how to. And we did have some students that attended the day at the Capitol with us and got to have those conversations with legislators, and that they love hearing from students because you are the people who this impacts the most. So we welcome students to be a part of that group next year as well. The next 2 pages are 2 staff spotlights I'm super excited about. 2 of my fellow executive directors, our executive director of technology, Amanda Fay, who was our interim executive director for a year and now is the executive director, and our executive director of community education, Kim Carlson. And she's been with us a year now. So we really got to see their departments and their teams through their lens and what was really most important to them. What were things that maybe you didn't know about that department and how impactful it was? What's a day in the life of IT look like? I thought that was really eye-opening and really poignant. And for Kim Carlson, it was great to see all of the experience that she brings to our district and then the lens that she's seen our programs and our opportunities through. So excited to work with both of them and excited to showcase them to our community. Signature programs, I'm going to turn that over to Mary.
So the next 5 pages of the report detail updates from many of our district's signature programs that our community is familiar with and proud of. We have a quote right in the introduction from Associate Superintendent Dr. Amy Ledoux talking about the impact of experiential learning through these programs and how these opportunities offer core experiences for students to discover interests and deepen their passions and skills that open future opportunities and possibilities. On page 15, we begin with our largest signature program, Immersion, which serves more than 4,000 students between the 2 languages offered. I love the quote from the student who is spotlighted here, Ellie Hewer. She shares that only 1 in 5 Americans speaks another language, and now she's one of them. Flipping the pages to 16 and 17, you'll see 4 more of our programs spotlighted. I'll call out just a few updates from each story, and you'll also see that there's a student spotlight for each program. Those students were recommended by leaders from the programs. So Minnetonka Research on page 16 offers collaborative research opportunities for high school students to pursue their own questions in a wide variety of areas driven by their interest. And these students have the opportunity to seek out and be mentored by experts in their fields from across the world. 82 students were involved in the program last year. The next story is about Momentum, our district's design and skilled trades program. And a fun story from last year was that our construction systems students entered a unique partnership with the City of Minnetonka Fire Department where they built training props for the fire department, and then they actually got to travel over to the fire department to see them being used. We also have a student quote from one of our graduating seniors. She was really involved in the aviation portion of Momentum her junior and senior year, and a week after graduation, she earned her private pilot's license. On page 17, we share about Vantage, an advanced professional studies program, and our spotlight student is from the public policy strand. She was part of the case committee, and in her quote, she talks about her experiences working with project partners and how impactful it was, the opportunity to present to you, the board. And then the last story in this section is on our Navigator program. The story also talks about that unique opportunity for exceptionally advanced learners in elementary levels, and also about advanced learning opportunities across the district, including middle school seminars and high school opportunities. And I love Maya's insight here about the power of growth mindset. She's learning that early, so it's incredible. Any questions about these 4 programs before we flip? All right. Then on page 18, we have our last 2 programs that are part of this story. The SAIL program. SAIL stands for Students Achieving Independent Life. This is our district's transition education program for students ages 18 to 22 with disabilities. And my favorite part of this story, the student quote, of course, and then the feature about the 4 new community partnerships. Erin Valenta talks about how these 4 opportunities that were driven by student interest give students the opportunity to keep expanding their skills as they move forward. And then the last story about Tonka Online showcases the growing number of full-time and supplemental students in this program, as well as an awesome quote from one of the students talking about the impact of her teachers and how they've made a difference in her coursework. Any questions about those? All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Our next article is on page 19, and it is about the Facilities Study Task Force. I thought this was a really important one for us to call out. They did an amazing amount of work last year looking at the district facilities. 26 members of the community, parents, students, staff, and administrators coming together to give us input. I think students did it through the Teaching and Learning Advisory, but the group came together to tour every single building, hear from the principals, hear from the staff surveys about what the needs were at every building. And they came back with a list of the biggest priorities of what we could put in place to support students now and in the future. And it was a big list. It was about $193 million worth of things. And they brought that to the board. And the board, you said that was a little high. And they came back and it was about $120 million, still a little high for us to go to the community and ask for that support. And then whittled it to $85 million of the most important projects. And that is the building bond referendum that will be on the ballot on November 4th. And so a big thank you to all the community members, parents, all the people that were involved in that facility study task force and did all of that work. We have put together an informational campaign about the referendum. There's a link to that in the article so that people can make themselves knowledgeable about what it all entails and make their decision about how they feel about that. Is there more that I should add on that? Okay. Anyone else that wants to speak at all to this one? Okay, and points of pride. This is Mary's baby. I'm gonna definitely have her do this one.
So yes, pages 20 to 23 feature our district's points of pride, which are familiar to you. We celebrate them throughout the year through our school board recognitions program, and so it's very fun to be able to compile all of those achievements into 4 pages. It definitely is an incredible amount of work and effort by our students and staff and community that's represented in these pages. And so each bullet point is a story. But we have them broken into 6 categories across the 4 pages. There is academics, activities, athletics, arts, service, and then district and staff. We have 6 photos that correspond with each of those areas, showcasing just one of the stories within that category. On page 21, you'll see a 3rd grade class that earned Best in Show, one of 4 teams out of 100 in a NASA science competition, as well as our high school mock trial team that made it to state for the very first time. And then our varsity boys football team, who we'll all be cheering on tomorrow at homecoming, celebrating their advancement to the state finals and 2nd place finish in state. Flipping to page 22, the rest of those photos are first from our Minnetonka theater program, the award-winning spring production of Anything Goes, as well as a photo from the celebration of service representing the service category. And we have 2 students from the Interact Club who presented with the executive director of ICA Food Shelf at the fall celebration of service last year, talking about the impact of the food shelf at Minnetonka High School that they help to run. And then our last picture is of Detective Armando Sanchez, who was one of our school resource officers last year. He was recognized as Skipper of the Year at the high school for his leadership and service there. Are there any questions about the points of pride? All right, then we'll flip over to pages 24 and 25. Page 24 is our annual spotlight on the community education program in our district. This article highlights the program's growth across offerings as well as new opportunities from 24-25. The photo that's featured is the Project SOAR Songbirds, a choir from the Project SOAR program, and they sang the national anthem at one of the Saints games this spring. And then the story on page 25, Jackie referenced it earlier in the table of contents. This story is sharing with the community about the impact of a $100,000 grant donation that the Minnetonka Public Schools Foundation gave to our district last fall. They partnered with the Teaching and Learning Department to really align with our district's literacy goals. They purchased more than 35,000 books that are in use in K-2 classrooms in English and Spanish. And the decodable readers are books that are specifically developed to help students practice learning those literacy patterns. So the picture in there is those books in action in an Excelsior Elementary classroom. They're holding those little phones, they're called whisper phones, so that they can hear themselves reading. So pretty cool. Any questions about those two stories? All right, thank you.
The next two pages used to be called the World's Best Workforce, and now they are called the Comprehensive Achievement and Civic Readiness Report, the CACR. The state in 2013 set achievement goals for school districts, and there were 5, and so we've been working to achieve those, to improve those every single year. Last year, 1 was added and 1 was moved. So the one that was all third graders should be reading at third grade level was moved to become through the READ Act, part of our literacy plan. And so in its place, we have prepare students to be lifelong learners as our additional 5th goal. And then on page 27, you can see the way that we track and work to improve those goals. Like, what is it that we measure? And you can see that for each one of them. And again, it leans into the MCAs, which again, Dr. Ledoux and Mr. Matt Breen will be talking about a little bit later, and shows you how our district does and where the gaps are compared to other districts, compared to the state average in math and in reading. It shows how we track how students are ready for college or career. What are the measurements we look at? And then how are we looking at preparing students to be lifelong learners, and how are we measuring that? So it really kind of explains that and walks through that. And there is a full report that will happen that will be available to the public, I believe December, is that right, Dr. Ledoux? December. Any questions on these 2 pages for Dr. Ledoux? And then the next 2 pages are the financial report, and this is a component of an annual report that is required by the state. We're also really excited to share these pages. Our financial team is incredible. For 30 years in a row, our team has received for the district the Excellence in Financial Reporting Award. We are also one of the only districts in the state that has a triple bond rating from Moody's, which is really high. It's like an exceptional credit rating, and helps us in a lot of ways. This really spells out the sources of where we get money, how we spend money, and then it shows the budget throughout the last year as compared to this year. And one of the things that we really call out on page 28 at the bottom is how efficient we are in spending money. On average, now these are the numbers that are available for comparison at this time. So as of this last 23-24 year, we received $232 less per student than the state average, and about $1,740 less than the average of all of these together receives. And yet we're able to do amazing things and hire amazing teachers with that limited funding, and a lot of that is due to our incredibly generous community. Is there any more, Superintendent Law or Treasurer Olson or anyone else that I kind of missed that you'd like to call out on these? No? Okay, and then the final page is a snapshot of the parent survey. I know this is very familiar to our school board and to Superintendent Law. We did a full presentation of the parent survey back in August. It's available on the website, and it's also available in our archives if you want to watch us walk through it and all of the results. And the link is right there, but really just calling out some of the incredible responses we got from parents, with 97% saying that our education is excellent or good, and that was up a percentage from last year. 94% of parents saying our school provides a safe learning environment, and that is up from last year. The measurements of well-being and belonging both up 2 points over last year, and 93% of parents saying they'd recommend their school to friends or neighbors, again up over last year. Any questions about the survey or comments? No? All right, we are ready to give you a folder containing 3 photos, and one of these photos is going to be selected to be the cover of the annual report. So I'm going to give you a few seconds, probably 30 seconds, to look at the 3 of them, pick your favorite, and then pick your backup favorite. And we'll see which one gets the most hands raised. So put them all side by side for yourself, pick your favorite, and then pick your backup favorite. Will you keep track of these, Mary, as they raise their hands? One column is just favorites. Everyone ready? Yep. Okay, how many people chose this one? Please raise your hands as your first one, not your favorite. Sorry, guys. How many chose this one as your favorite? We have 1, 2. How many chose this one as your favorite? I would say that this is going to be the cover of our annual report. I'm not going to show it to the camera. Any questions for us before we hand the mic over to the next one? And thank you again for the opportunity to present. This is always our favorite thing to present.
Look, we have a question.
Just a comment. I've seen quite a few of these now, and it's always amazing and makes me really proud to be a part of this district. You guys put so much work into it. You know, I know it's a ton of work, and it's a labor of love, and it's something that I know we win awards every year. You stack this annual report up with any other district, pretty much any other public company, and we blow them away. So just really proud to be part of Minnetonka. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary, because she did so much of this. You're amazing.
Anyone else? Yes, Megan.
So if there's just like formatting or type of follow up with you
Yep,
later?
just follow up with
Perfect.
me if there's anything that you see where you're like, ooh, or if you see something where you're like, this really is a miss, we need to add something, I want to hear it. We've got, we'll come back with a final for you to hopefully approve at the October 9th board meeting, and then after that, we'll send it to print, and then it'll go to all district residents, it'll go to all families, and then we'll give it to our staff, and it'll be in welcome kits for new families and new employees.
Thank you very much for all this hard work.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
All right, next item on our agenda, discussion of remote access to board meetings. Superintendent Law.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, in the 2025 study session, the legislature made an update to how school board members can participate in board meetings remotely. Minnesota Statute 13D.02 provides guidance for school boards to conduct a meeting using interactive technology. Because of that change, this board had a discussion on August 21st about how this board might consider remote participation in school board meetings. Based on that discussion, the proposed policy, Policy 219, was created. This policy reflects that discussion and the sentiment of the board, and I'll just read the purpose of this. The school board embraces accountability and transparency in the conduct of its business. The school board shall conduct its business under the presumption of an in-person attendance at board meetings. However, the school board recognizes and respects that in limited circumstances, board members may need to participate remotely in board meetings. The public interest is best served when there is full in-person attendance by the board members. This policy goes on to provide the definition of a meeting, the requirement of a quorum, meeting the notice requirements. Now, notice for this policy, the notice requirements had previously been that if a board member was going to be remote, they had to be in a public place and note where that public place was. That is no longer a requirement, and this board acknowledged that for matters of public interest where hearing from all board members is important, but if board members away from Minnetonka, they can still participate as long as they can be seen and heard and they can see and hear everyone else in the conversation. Those procedures are identified below. Remote attendance would not be required for study sessions. If a board member is remote, all votes need to be conducted by roll call, so each member's vote on an issue can be identified and recorded. There are some examples that are holdovers from previous policy, like in the event that there's some crisis, at least one board member needs to be in the room. With that, I think this reflects the sentiment of the board. You've all had the chance to review this. I'd open this up for comments. After this date, this will move to the consent agenda in October 9th for approval. Mr. Chair.
All right. Ironically enough, I wasn't at the meeting where we discussed this, so I'd like to hear from you all whether you feel this captures the feeling of that prior discussion. Megan.
I think it does, because I like that it stresses that we hope to be here in person. I think we talked about that at that meeting. I had kind of two practical questions. For the notice piece, it talks about that we have to provide notice that members may be participating in the meeting by interactive technology. Does that mean that if a board member had a last-minute reason that they can't be here in person, that they would not be able to participate because there wouldn't be the window of time to provide the notice to the public that they may be remote?
I think our intent is if we know in advance someone's going to be remote, that we would do that. We would have the ability and flexibility if there was an emergency at the last minute to announce it at the board meeting. We're not required to pre-notice that.
Okay.
With it, this policy acknowledges that board members may be participating remotely.
Okay. And then my second question was for procedures G, it says remote attendance will not be required for study sessions. So I had a two-part question on that, question on a question. So does that mean that it is required for other board meetings? Like if somebody's traveling internationally, is the expectation now that they must participate remotely? Because the way it's phrased, it makes it sound like if it's not required for a study session, it kind of implies that it is for a regular meeting. So I didn't know about that. But then also I was thinking, well, what if there was a study session where somebody really wanted to participate in the conversation, but they're not able to be present? Does this then exclude them being able to? So yeah, that was my two.
I think it's a good question. With the board discussion, I think the discussion with study sessions have, because they're not voting sessions, they have less. The presumption is if we're all going to vote on, if you're all going to vote on something, we would want everyone to be able to voice it. And at a study session, since you're not taking a vote, there's less of a requirement. I'm open to different language there. I agree that the word required makes it imply that it would be required. We could either scratch that line and not differentiate between meetings, because it's always an option. That would, I mean, that might get rid of it.
Yeah, so I'm curious, so are we saying that we will accommodate remote participation in study sessions? That would be a first question,
I
is
think
like, are
that
we
is-
going to accommodate it?
Our goal is to provide that. It's more
necessary.
challenging at a study session than it is here. So maybe the word is will not be expected. Or that still implies that it's expected at board meetings.
Yeah, kind of agree with Megan here, because I think the votes are important, but really a lot of the substantive work and debate that gets us to the vote happens at the study session. So I think it could be really, really important for people to have that option to attend remotely. My question is there a technological obstacle to doing that, or will we be required to have such a study session up here like we are tonight?
I think the short answer is we would do it in this place if we needed to do that for that. Then I would recommend we just remove item G.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Then we don't differentiate between, it doesn't set a requirement. And then in the event that in a study session, we want to make sure we can see and hear everybody, we would do it here.
Is it sufficiently clear that board meetings is a broad term that encompasses study sessions? Or should our procedures first line before paragraph A say school board meetings or study sessions may be conducted?
I think that makes sense.
Patrick, do we perhaps want to tie that to the necessity of a quorum? When do we need to have a quorum?
Really only for seasons.
Yeah.
Well, for not
For
study
regular.
sessions, for board meetings.
For board meetings, sorry. Yeah. We're up here, so that's already, I'm already confused.
But then would that be implying that if we already had a quorum, somebody would not participate remotely? I think somebody participating remotely would still count towards a quorum, right? Yeah, yeah.
That you can, that includes being a quorum if you're remote.
So I think going back to Chair Leo Halloran's question, I think the phrase school board meetings encompasses all meetings.
I'm okay scratching G. I mean, I think
Okay.
that makes it less confusing.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
I had a question about the purpose statement.
Sure.
That last sentence says, "The public interest is best served when there is full in-person attendance by the Board of Directors." I'm just wondering if that's too strong a statement, if we are saying that allowing remote attendance is not in the public interest, which I don't think is what we're saying. And it would be the opposite of what the legislature concluded when they passed the changes.
How about the public interest is best served when there's full participation by the Board of Directors?
Yeah, I think that's, because I do think that,
I feel like I think it's great to point out. I think the discussion that we had was more, as we allow this, and I don't know if we said it exactly this way, but that board members forcing remote attendance. And so we really wanted to more talk about to encourage in-person attendance was best served for the board, for the public, for the district. And so that, having remote participation be the normal isn't, that, I feel like, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that's what we were trying to go for with this, but we did want to accommodate it. So I think that's more into recognizes the limited circumstances, and I think the follow-up sentence to that was really maybe to be more strong from that standpoint, to help protect future boards from a board member that might want to, be remote all the time.
And
We didn't say it exactly that way. I think I'm putting words in the board's mouth from that standpoint.
and I think to your point, Chris, I think general statement of policy, section 2, covers us in that regard because it sets the expectation that meetings of the school board shall be attended in person. So that's pretty strong, unequivocal language that the expectation is that we be here. But to Patrick's point, sometimes the fullest participation, even if it's not in person, might be better than the alternative.
That full participation is better than having somebody missing. Right, because sentence 2 in the purpose talks about the presumption of in-person attendance. And then section 2 up there also is the general statement of shall be attended in person. So I think that part is pretty clear without.
So,
I think as I'm hearing, and it's consistent with what I heard from folks after the meeting I missed, is that this is an authority we have. We want to be judicious in how we use it. And we want to make sure that that the board and future boards understand the premium that we put on these interactions. And I think this does that. My concern is, as the board members remember, and many people know, I'm also an attorney and I can't turn that part of my brain off. So this public interest comment just seems a little overbroad to me as written, and I would be comfortable with either Superintendent Law's suggested amendment or striking that sentence altogether, because I don't think it adds to that feeling of what our priority is and how we would use it. And I do worry that it might be cross purposes.
I'll restate my proposed amended language. The last sentence would read, "The public interest is best served when there's full participation by the Board of Directors."
I'm fine with that. All right, any other comments, questions, suggested amendments?
Just a quick comment. I was also away for that study session, but I watched the live stream because I was able to. I would love to have been part of the conversation, but even having that accommodation was really meaningful to me because I got to watch and hear it real time what was happening. So I just wanted to acknowledge that I think that addition to what we're doing for the public and for us as board members is really valuable.
Thank you.
Okay, this will come back as proposed tonight. It would be on the consent agenda in October.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is an update on excellence in student learning academic progress. Superintendent Law.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, each September we provide an update on academic progress. During my time here, we've continued to hone what the board should expect throughout the year as we measure progress in student learning. This is specifically an update on the board goal of an update on excellence in student learning academic progress, and we'll cover assessment results we have to date. Associate Superintendent Amy Ledoux.
Good evening, Superintendent Law, Mr. Chair, members of the board. We're excited to be here tonight to provide you with an update on our student progress from the 2024-25 school year. Tonight I have with me Mr. Matt Breen. He is our new Director of Research, Analysis, and Systemic Improvement. As you know, this is a position that we redesigned for this current school year to meet our evolving needs. And tonight you'll also see that we're using a new format to share with you our student achievement data that's more integrated with the idea of making visible how we're working to maximize the data and the information we have to both inform and improve our system, as well as to be responsive to our students and their learning goals. Tonight, we hope you leave here knowing a broad picture of how we're doing as a school district, knowing that we'll have future reports during the year where we drill down and look more specifically at student groups or different programs, as well as we want you to have an understanding of how we're thinking about data as telling a story, and how it really helps inform us about the students that we serve in our district through all things teaching and learning. So as Superintendent Law mentioned, this is a report directly related to our school board goal, excellence and innovation in student learning and support. And tonight we're focusing on student learning and how we're monitoring academic progress. The action step related to this is our goal and our commitment to ensuring that each student is receiving outstanding instruction, and we'll be providing a variety of disaggregated data, as well as how we're performing on various standardized assessments and our participation in rigorous coursework. Tonight, this report will really address technically 6 assessments, even though we've kind of packaged 2 together. Of course, the MCAs, which are criterion reference state tests that allow us to measure student progress with state standards. Our NWEA measures of academic progress, which allows us really to look at student achievement, to look at progress and growth, and to look at that in a nationally normed way, not only at the grade band, but allowing us to really look at students across the continuum of learning, expanding beyond grade levels. We're going to touch briefly on the FastBridge curriculum-based measure and early reading, which we use really as a leading indicator in our district. This is information that teachers use that's directly related to the Minnesota READ Act. This is an approved assessment to measure and monitor if students are reading at grade level, as well as to inform how we're responding to student needs instructionally and which students we might need more information about to target our instruction aligned to their needs. Additionally, we're going to touch on the ACT, which looks at college readiness and is a predictor of how students will do when they attend college. And finally, the 2 that we packaged together, an overview of our AP and IB exams. Specifically, we're going to cover our MCAs. We'll look at Minnetonka trend data compared to the state, neighboring districts, and by grade level. We're going to look at our MAP data, doing comparisons to national mean scores by grade level, as a measure that you just saw in our annual report, broken down, as well as looking at conditional growth. And Mr. Breen will be talking more about that and why and how we look at that. Additionally, as we look at ACT, we'll look at the subtests as well as the participation rates, or the number of attempts that students take because that's part of the story. And finally, as we look at AP and IB exams, not only will we look at exams completed, we're going to look at our participation rates, those average scores, and our passing rates. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Breen to delve into our specifics of our data and our achievement.
Thank you. So we're going to start with our MCA reading assessment and look really with our neighboring districts here. And so what you're seeing in terms of a trend from 2021, where we were third place behind Wayzata and Edina, moved up to a tie for second in 2022 behind Wayzata and tied with Edina. We were in first place amongst neighboring districts for 23 and 24. And this year we are in third place behind West Tonka and Edina. In terms of comparison with neighboring districts, we have continued to have small increases or decreases from year to year. And just as a collective, this is our second highest proficiency rate since 2021, only behind our 2024 results. On the math side, in 2021, we started out from this window of time in third place behind Wayzata and Edina. And we've spent the last 3 years in second place behind Wayzata. And happy to point out tonight, and it was pointed out previously, that for 2025, we are first place amongst neighboring districts. There is some more depth to that story that we'll get into as well around participation rates. And our participation rates remain high compared to neighboring districts and compared to the state. And we'll be happy to answer any questions about that as well. For our MCA reading by grade trend, what you can see with the bold and italicized numbers is 2024 really was a kind of signature year in terms of a lot of increases from 23 to 24. And off of that, we did continue to increase in 2025 in 7th grade. The remainder of them had modest declines with a little bigger decline in 3rd grade that I will talk about a little more later when we dig into the story of really for any individual student. On the math side, again, we're seeing a little more dispersed numbers in terms of where those bold and italicized values are, with grade 6 and 7 really seeing really strong gains this year to their highest point. But also, when you look at this, the 11th grade declined slightly. This, coming off that 2023 high point, what you're seeing with that again is that slight decline, but also when you look at our participation rates, if you were to compare to a Wayzata, for instance, our participation rates were almost 20% higher than Wayzata on the MCA math, and so it does make it difficult to do a one-to-one comparison with the neighboring district when you have that different participation rate. Looking at NWA reading, a chart that you've become familiar with, again, our students continue to score in alignment with means well above their grade. The 6th grade students, you can see that metric that you're looking at is, again, beyond 12th grade would be the average score for students in that grade if they took it. And the NWA does ceiling out a little bit in terms of what you're going to see, and you'll see that a little bit when we start to look at our growth as well, the impact of that idea of the ceiling as we continue to move through the grades. So I want you to keep that 6th grade in mind here as we look specifically at reading, and we look at these numbers, and you can see the improvements in kindergarten and 1st grade that happened from 23-24 to 24-25. But what I want to get into just quickly to make sure that we're on the same page about conditional growth. So MEC growth is one metric that is often referred to when we talk about NWA, and MEC growth, again, is really that idea of a student had a fall marker that you maybe have become familiar with that if they made that fall to spring growth, they met growth. If they missed by 1, it was the same reporting out as if they missed by 8. If they made it by 1, same reporting out as if they made it by 8. And so what conditional growth really does, the idea is to bring more specificity to the data. And so when we think about any particular student, say a student who's in 5th grade who has a 240 RIT score in the fall, that student then is compared nationally to all other 5th graders who scored a 240 in the fall. And all of those students make some level of growth, whether that maybe is a slight decline. Most of them grow right around that MEC growth number. which gets to be as small as 2 when you get up to that with the higher RIT scores. And then some do go beyond that. And so what happens is their growth is normally distributed, the collection of all students who score that 240. And so when we're looking at this, we're really thinking about, again, not what percent of students met growth, but that idea that of all students, and so you are being compared to like students, which as you get a higher RIT score becomes just a more competitive like student group. That's what we're starting to see. So I bring that up really specifically here when we look at 6th grade, and the idea that 6th grade goes to 49.5. In 6th grade, we had in reading, we had 18 students who were already at the 99th percentile last fall. We had over 50 students who were already at a 240 RIT, and so they are really, again, pressing against that ceiling and being compared to other students around the country who are pressing against that ceiling. So again, we're looking at a little different metric, a little different competition when we get to that point. And so that 6th grade number being a little lower is related back to the idea of that beyond 12th grade that we're seeing in terms of our student performance. Math, you can see also that beyond 12th grade and where that starts, and that's impactful. But again, we continue to have those strong results, those consistent results in terms of where each grade is scoring compared to, again, our 3rd graders scoring at what would early 6th grade student would average on this NWA. So the conditional growth here, again, you can see multiple grades that have increased their conditional growth from 23-24 to 24-25. But you also see, again, I just want to call out that 6th and 7th grade where it is a little different impact here. And just to put some numbers there, there were over 250 students in 6th grade last year in the fall who were already at a 240 RIT or higher. There were over 75 students who were already at the 99th percentile. And so when we talk about that growth, again, there are students who are at the 99th percentile and still do grow 99%. That still is plausible. It's, again, just a little different comparison. Our ACT trends. So our number of test takers, you can see, was slightly lower in the class of 2025, and we did have a little bump up in the reading subtest average. The other changes, again, modest declines from 24 to 25 in English and math, the science and the composite. But there, again, in the idea of really talking about the story, I do want to highlight one additional piece with ACT. And admittedly, when I started this, I had a goal to not bring up p-values for the entire presentation. That was, I wanted to avoid it, but I just could not here because I want to make sure to at least talk about the magnitude of this change. So I went back to 2020 here to really capture that last graduating class whose ACT experience was not necessarily impacted by COVID. And so what you're seeing there in the top row, the 24% of students who took the ACT once in 2020. In 2025, that went from 24 to 48% who took the ACT a single time. Students took it twice, declined slightly from 2020 to 2025. That percent who took it 3 or more times went from 41% in 2020 down to 20% in 2025. And so when we look at the actual average number of attempts, 2.44 in 2020, and 1.84, which you can see was a little bump back up from the class of 2024, that difference is like Powerball level difference in terms of the likelihood of that occurring just by chance. And so that was a drastic change that, again, we do expect to see that continue to bounce back a little bit as the narrative around the ACT continues to seemingly sort of change back to where we were previously. But that is an impactful measure, especially when we're talking about these subscores and how a student's highest subscore or highest composite. Participation in AP and IB exams. So this is participation rate in terms of students who were enrolled in an AP or IB course on really the first day of school, and what percent of those students ended up taking the corresponding AP or IB exam. And so what you're seeing there is that From 2021, you're seeing that we did bump up really in both. And then ultimately in 2025, we had a very slight decline on the AP on top and IB on the bottom. The AP number went down to 94.8%, the IB number to 88.5%. Just a couple of impactful pieces there that I do want to bring up. We did see certain courses in the Vantage strands where we had a lot of no grades on IB. So about almost 40% of the students who did not end up taking the IB exam came from courses in our Vantage program. So that was a notable measure and has had an impact also on our AP and IB numbers overall that is an important factor here over these next couple of slides. So our participation and trend on AP exams has continued to excel, and you see each year both the number of exams, but also the average score and pass rate increasing each year. And again, that was a very modest decline in terms of participation rate, but also an increase in terms of number of exams. Some of the notable trends with the AP exam changes in numbers is we did have an increase of about 80% in AP seminar exams since 2021, and about a 70% increase in the AP microeconomics. And again, back to the idea of Vantage, these are two of our fastest growing Vantage, or one of our fastest growing Vantage strands since 2021 is that global business course that houses these exams. We also have seen an increase based on the scope and sequence in our English department in that AP English language and composition 10th grade, that 73% increase in number of exams being the first advanced placement or IB English course that students can take, the only one offered in 10th grade. IB exams. So included here are both unique students and number of exams completed. Again, part of the bigger picture here is the idea that where we hit our peak in terms of unique students in 2023, since then we have had a decrease of 16% in exams taken, but only a decrease of 11% in exam takers. So the exams have decreased by 16, but the exam takers have decreased by 11. And again, what that highlights is we have more students taking a single IB exam or maybe dropping from 3 to 2. Our average number of IB exams since 2023 per student have gone from 1.56 to 1.47. So the decreases is more in the number of exams, and I'll call back again the impact of two areas. The IB Langen Lit course at the high school has seen a decrease with that AP Langen Comp going up. And then also the impact of that business analytics course and the global business course that we have seen, that we have seen at Advantage. Many of those students are only taking that IB exam, the IB business exam. So that percent of students who took only one exam went from 65 to 72%, but for the IB business students went from 67 to 82%. So that single exam has really come from that IB business group. And then some of the impact of the average score, a couple of the courses that have seen declines were historically some of our higher average scores on the IB exam, IB Langen Lit being one of them, that SL course. I want to transition now to dig in a little bit more of how we really want to turn this data into a story. And over the last couple of months, I've spent over between the middle of October and the beginning of July, I've spent over 20 days in buildings really just talking to building leaders, teachers, support staff about data that's at the building level or the student level, and all just really working to try and operationalize the story behind this data. And so I want to start tonight really with adding depth to one particular student, a fifth grader in one of our buildings. In the fall, was at the first percentile last fall for NWA. He ended the year at the 8th percentile. Again, On the surface, you look at that and look at the 1st and 8th percentile and think about all the room for growth and may have a certain response to that, emotional response. But that student on that conditional growth, they scored tied or better than 94% of all students nationally who started in the same spot that they started. If that student continues to do that, they will end up in the mid-20s by next spring, and they would end up just under 50 in the 50th percentile in 2 springs on that continued growth. And so a lot of our conversations have really been about the meaning of that story, what we can learn from that story, and how we can operationalize that and reflect upon and think about how did we make sure that that student had the best educational experience last year and continue that path forward. So I want to go through our 3rd through 7th reading, digging into this story a little bit. And I had referenced 3rd grade as being one group that had an MCA decline from last year from 2024 to 2025. But I want to highlight, so for the next few slides, I have used students who took all of the included assessments. So if they missed one, they weren't in this data, just for the opportunity to be able to cross-reference this data to talk about this story. So what you're looking at on the screen right now, on the right half here, you're seeing the number of students and percent who were proficient on the MCA in 3rd grade. And again, amongst students who took all of these assessments. And the left half, those not proficient. I want to dig in on that left side here and really look at their data a little more deeply. So of those 305 students, 189 of them had more than a year's growth on the NWA. And that year's growth is a term that can be thrown around maybe too casually at times, but what we're really highlighting here is the idea of students who, on that normal curve, were on the right half of that curve. They were not just to the met growth, but beyond on that curve. So that is 62% of our students who are not proficient on the MCA made that growth. So looking now deeper at the 116 students who had less than 1 year's growth, of those students, 29 of them increased by at least 10 percentile points on their fluency check through FastBridge. So again, another metric that is a real-time actionable metric for those students who made notable growth from the fall to the spring on their fluency check and had less than 1 year growth and were not proficient. But in the end, when we look at all of these students, we had 89.3% of our students, when we look at that whole story, met at least one of those 3 criteria. And again, reframing and having those deeper discussions around that data. And so moving through a little more quickly with 4th grade, what started out as 25.5% on that not proficient side, 127 of those students made more than a year's growth on the NWA. And then we had, of those 88 students who made less than 1 year's growth, 20 of them had that 10 percentile point or more increase from fall to spring on their percentile. So now we're at 91.9% of students who have a story for us to build off of and to talk about and to reflect upon. 5th grade, the 17.6, more than 1 or less than 1 year growth. And looking at, again, that less than 1 year growth, having another 14 who grew at least 10 percentile points, up to 92.5% of that group, that student group. 6th grade, same idea here. The only difference with 6th grade is we don't have that fast fluency, and so we take one level of that digging into the data away, but again, we're at 90.5% here. And then 7th grade, which has a slightly lower MCA proficiency rate locally and statewide, similarly though, had 100 students who made more than 1 year's growth and ended up at 86.7%. So where 7th grade was 8% behind 6th grade in terms of MCA proficiency, they were 4% behind when we look deeper into that data and really start to understand that full picture. So again, our goal is really adding this depth and operationalizing this data, being mindful and intentional about how we bring this to staff, to building leaders, and making it certain that reflection is really occurring. And again, celebrating those wins, not just internally, but with families and helping families recognize the growth that their students are making, being clear about the purpose of each one of our assessments and how they interact with each other and how we can triangulate. Recognition that each alone is just one data point and that our story is to honor and best respond to all the unique needs and what we learn through each individual assessment, and to provide that guidance and support for staff in both analyzing and operationalizing this in their instructional practices. Thank you. I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Ledoux.
So as we plan forward and we continue our work, we want to ensure that we're becoming increasingly responsive to our students' instructional needs by leveraging the data and the information that we have and really looking at that full story of how and where students are growing and what's next for them on that instructional continuum. We want to make sure that we're utilizing in this process the feedback that we're getting from our principals, our teachers, the support staff that supports our students at the building, so that we're meeting their needs to help them do this work most effectively. And then we want to make sure that all of the assessments that we're utilizing really are purposeful, and that we're all clear about the purpose, the strengths, the limitations, and that we're using those both to think about our student achievement. We're using that to think about what we need to do instructionally and how we can be most effective. And we're thinking about what it means for the system. How do we keep improving our programs, our curriculum, and the work that we do to make sure that each of our students is having the greatest level of success possible? So with that, we would be happy to answer any questions and or take any feedback related to this shift in format.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Law.
For board members' purposes, we plan to provide a similar report every year at this time. And our goal, if you looked at that grade level data and the story behind the story, we want to start increasing the percent of students that are either passing or on their way to passing and be reporting that at this time of year. So that, we're really looking for your feedback either tonight or throughout the year about how we're presenting differently and other things you'd like to see us measure.
Okay. Board members, any questions, comments? Dr. Mike.
I have a few questions for you. If you wouldn't mind backing up to the slides where you're talking about conditional growth, you were explaining the what conditional growth meant, and I just wanted to ask a point of clarification.
Yep.
Sorry, you had to back up so far.
No, all good.
Okay. So you had mentioned that this is basically the average for these grades, how they are comparing to their peers who scored at the same level during the fall test. Is that correct? Right. So the numbers that we're looking at are functionally a percentile, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's what I assume by your description. I just want to make sure that I was understanding that correctly. Yeah. So when we're moving forward with that description, we have a better understanding of what that means. Second of all, the ACT, you were commenting on the discrepancy, the ACT exam. Thank you. Do we have some grasp on what the reason for the decreased number of attempts is? Is it because are our scores dropping significantly? In other words, are people kind of giving up earlier and not taking successive tests, not repeating the attempt because they just are giving up on the system, or?
No, I think that there were, as you may recall, there were some significant changes around the COVID window. Many colleges quit requiring these exams. Right. And they've continued to have many colleges that have submission of ACT scores or scores optional to submit. And so students, depending on their college plans and the requirements of their college, may not find that this is the place to put their time and effort that's the most valuable for them. As Matt mentioned, we are seeing more colleges start to move back toward encouraging and or even requiring students to submit scores. And so we are starting to see that, what we believe will be a continued uptick.
Okay. So we expect that will probably increase as students are driving more towards getting those higher scores again.
We think that will be the case. Yep. The other part that's going to be potentially impactful is the dropping of the science section as a requirement. And so that commitment to taking it is a potential factor that could also be impactful as we move forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Last question. The IB exams, you were comparing the unique students versus the exams completed, the decrease in 11% versus 16% respectively. Do we know what the number of students not taking any exams are, if that percentage is increasing and is probably or is possibly a significant driver of that discrepancy between the 11 and the 16%?
So are you saying not taking any AP or IB exams?
Right. So these are only the students who are taking the exams, correct?
Yep.
Do we have any numbers on students who are taking the courses but are not taking the exams? Since that was part of our policy change as far as the weighting grade is
Yes,
concerned.
so that participation rate, and I apologize, this is AP exams on the top row and IB exams on the bottom row.
Okay.
We did see that slight decline in AP, and again, that IB change, we really looked at those couple of courses that seemed to be a pretty significant impact on that change on the IB side. And then a little bit that Vantage impact on really all of these numbers, students really wanting to experience the school of opportunity, and then while doing that on the Vantage side, having a little more of a students who aren't taking the IB exam out of that program.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Kemery?
I think this is really impactful. And I don't think we've seen data drilled down like this before. So thank you. And the story behind the story is what I didn't even know that's what we needed, but I think we need it. And so thank you. And I actually was wanting to drill in a little bit more to the Vantage IB. Do you have an idea of why it's specific to Vantage?
I think it's the idea of a student who chooses IB at the high school is really choosing the IB program, that IB course. A student at Vantage, I think, is choosing Vantage that happens to have IB or AP courses included in it. And so I think that is an impact on that in terms of really the experiential side that they're getting, where they aren't necessarily focusing on those individual courses involved as much as they are the actual strand.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
I would like to add on to that. I know last year I was in Vantage International Relations, and there were a lot of seniors in my class, and the IB test date ended up being on senior day, which is where the seniors do like all of their activities. So we only had 2 seniors in our class take the IB exam because it was on such an impactful day where they signed the rock and got to meet everyone. So I know that was a really big part with that. Additionally, with ACT scores, I know, so going back a little bit, they just restructured the entire test so it's shorter and there's less questions, which will make the test a lot easier for students to understand and study for. I've recently just taken the new test and I found it a lot better. And I know all of my friends have already heard about how much better it is, so the test scores will for sure go up in how many tests people will be taking.
Thank you. And is that the global politics course?
Yes.
In your van?
Yeah.
That was the single course with the most non-test takers was
Yeah.
global politics.
Yeah.
So now we know again the story behind the story at an even deeper level, thanks
Okay.
to our students.
Delilah?
I also just want to add on a little bit about IB test. I've been talking around, and there's a friend of mine who did inform me that there was some misconceptions going on and spreading of people being like, oh, maybe you shouldn't take that course because they were saying like, oh, it's only international credit and things like that. So maybe it would be nice to get out into the community of students and really educate them about the importance behind like taking an IB exam and taking the class and seeing how even though it's not like AP, which is as well known and widespread, kind of going into also the benefits specifically with an IB course.
Thank you for that feedback.
Yes, Megan.
I'm thinking about that third grade blip, and we kind of saw that decrease. And so what I'm wondering is, with this and looking for the story, do we have a way to kind of look at that particular group of students and see if there are some commonalities? Or, I mean, I have some guesses about why third grade, like they may have missed a year of preschool during the pandemic, but are we able to kind of look into the data and try to identify commonalities? And then because we can follow them and see what their growth is longitudinally. But it was just interesting that there's that blip there at the third grade was so significant compared to the other grade levels. So it made me wonder, like, why?
And as we looked back at even the national norms on NWEA with that cohort, we saw that they trended down at kindergarten, first, second. So to your point, is that part of COVID? Is there other factors? We haven't identified specific factors, but we have looked across the data. And part of the reason that we started drilling down and having that conversation about, so what else do we know? Are they growing? Are they making progress? And they're just not there yet. And certainly that's what we found. So continuing to look at how we can improve that.
Follow-up question, having the ability to have kind of all the data in one spot, are we able to look at it with like behavioral data? Or, I mean, just, I have talked to some parents in the community that's 1 year younger than one of my kids, and they have been saying that just like, it seemed like the kids didn't know how to be in a classroom, and that the teachers were dealing with a lot of behavioral challenges. And I feel like those things tie together, but I'm just wondering if by having that central location for all that data, we're able to kind of match some of that?
You want to talk about EduClimber a little
Sure.
bit?
So that behavioral side is an area we're continuing to look at in terms of how we have data that gets put into Skyward that we can access. There's also that data that's not necessarily put into Skyward, where there's certain minor incidents that may occur at an elementary, and how we respond to those might be different in terms of where we aggregate that data. But we are talking about ways to make sure that we can be a little more consistent in aggregating that data, so that we can bring that in, even though we won't be bringing it in through our EduClimber data system. We could then cross-reference it with a pull from that EduClimber data and really start to look at, by building by grade and that potential cross-reference. Yeah, thank you.
Dan?
No questions. I just thought this was a really great analysis and wanted to, I know, like, looking at data and numbers like these, bell curves, standard deviations, percentiles, like a person's eyes can glaze over very quickly, and it can seem impersonal, hard to understand, and hard to see how that relates to my kid in this district. But we just saw with one NWEA exam for one cohort the layers of analysis that we do with the kids who took the test, and then the kids who performed this way, and then examining those kids further. And we've got, 6 different assessments that we can do that with and really pinpoint the needs of all of our students. So I think the more that we focus on these tools and continuing to do that analysis will just continue to prove out how well students do the longer they spend time in our system. So I'm just thankful for the level of care that went into this.
Thank you. Yes, Chris?
Yeah, I think we were aligned. I'm an engineer, so I'm a math nerd, so seeing another math nerd up there on steroids is great, and it's a great thing for our district. So I very much appreciate it, very much appreciated the change in presentation. And really, when it comes down to it, when Dan talked about it, the things that we do and the policies that we're doing up here, it's great to see how it gets operationalized and see the growth in AP and IB participation in the classes and people taking the test. And, we made a change in the policy last year. It's good to see that we haven't seen anything from that standpoint. It's good to see as we offer Vantage and Momentum strands and we sneak AP and IB classes in there that, okay, maybe they're not taking the test, but they're getting that accelerated learning and that college experience. And I think that's so important. And to Dan's point, digging into the data, the story behind the story, I think what Minnetonka does and what our administration and our teachers do so well is operationalize that data and to really impact students. And again, it's great for us to understand the story and see the presentation, but the real work, like Dan talked about, I think is the most impactful, and it's really great to see that. So thank you.
Agreed. I'll speak up on behalf of the nerds on the board that, don't worry about the p-value. Bring it on. Bring it on. We want to see it. I do think it's good to tell the story behind the story, and it's, the story behind the data. What can we drill down to? But it's not only just to tell a story. We're not just trying to say, see, we are fantastic here at Minnetonka. What we want to do is, like you said, operationalize that information. We want to find out what can we do now that we know that that particular student has great growth, but is still at that level. How do we keep that comparative growth moving upward? And I appreciate that. I hope we can keep doing that, making that effort to operationalize what we're finding.
I just wanted to add also, I think we already have a takeaway, which is to make sure that senior day is not scheduled on a day where
That is
there are
definitely a
high
takeaway.
stakes testing. So I really appreciate having you here and being able to contribute that, because I think that's a huge data point that maybe would have gotten overlooked. So that and educating about what international baccalaureate tests do for somebody, and that it's not just if you're going to go abroad. So I think those are really important pieces of feedback. Thank you.
Mike?
And also to make sure that we're informing the public that we're not leaving behind those people that aren't meeting those two or three criteria, that those really are the focus of our attention.
You're here. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Now we're moving on to review of 2025 paid 2026 preliminary levy. Superintendent Law.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, each September, public school districts need to present a preliminary levy to the community and have the board formally approve it. You certify the preliminary levy today, and this is formally approved in December, but that gives the public time to review it. Tonight, Executive Director of Finance and Operations, Mr. Paul Bourgeois, is going to go through our preliminary levy. Mr. Bourgeois.
Thank you, Superintendent. All members of the board, as I'm bringing this up, we're going to be talking about finances and money, and the only thing I could think related to money is, or pertinent thing about it is there was a philosopher from the last century named David Lee Roth who said, money can't buy you happiness, but it can buy you a yacht that you can tie up next to it. So,
Words to live by.
Okay, our preliminary levy is a very important document and very, very important calculation because it determines a significant amount of our revenue every year. So this levy that we're looking at putting forth in December of 25 will be payable in 26 for funding 2027, fiscal year 27. And there's 9 major levy categories. I'm not going to read them all on this slide. I just list them there, but these levies make up actually 93% of the total overall levy. So there's over 40 levy categories. And but if you have a handle on these, you have a handle on the bulk of it. And in fact, there's some prior year adjustment levies for operating referendum and local optional revenue. And if you tie those in with the ongoing or the future levy, those dollar amounts make up 95% of the proposed preliminary levy. So for our operating referendum, it's a very important source of revenue for our general operating fund. We basically pick up $2,340.76 per adjusted pupil. We're currently at the state cap. We've been trying since 2017 to get that raised, and that's one thing where we just got to keep hammering away to try to get that increase going forward for future financial stability. But for 25 pay 26, we will be proposing to levy $29.5 million, which is a $1.3 million increase from the current levy for that we collected in 25, that's funding fiscal 26. It's a $74.45 increase, 2.37% increase on a per pupil basis. I noted that the operating referendum prior year adjustment there of $860,000. If you add those two together, we'll be utilizing $30,379,000 worth of operating referendum dollars to fund our general operating fund. And as a proportion of the approximately $173 million budget that it looks like we'll be having next year, that's about 17% approximately. So it's a significant revenue source. Local optional revenue is $724 per adjusted pupil, and with a couple of minor tweaks to it, but we will be levying approximately $9 million for 25, pay 26. It's an increase of $113,000, which is related to the number of pupils that we have that were up from a year ago. We think we're going to be able to bring those forward. We actually have a makeup levy there of $350,000, so about $9.4 million. If you take the two of them, we're at pushing $40 million. That is local revenue that goes into fund a big chunk of our operations through the general operating fund. That $724 has been frozen since the first chunk of it actually was frozen since 2014, $424, and then another chunk of $300 was added on in 2019. That's been frozen. So they've lost against inflation. If we actually were able to receive an inflationary adjustment there, we would be receiving another $300 per pupil, and that would be equal to about $3.7 million. Again, talking about ways to benefit school districts at the legislature, that would be one way something we should consider lobbying for again and again, as we've been doing. Our technology referendum revenue, it's technically the capital projects referendum revenue, about $10.4 million, up from $10 million. And it is a voter-approved levy, and it's calculated on the overall total property values in the district. There's a calculation that runs through, and then a rate is applied to 6.569% of what's called net tax capacity. And so it's up 3.6% from a year ago. I just put a couple on there from the prior years. There was some really significant adjustments to values of property in the district. In 21, it went up 20.3%. 22, 23 values increased 8.1%. Over the prior year. So there's been a total of 34% increase in district market value and property values in 3 years. A lot of that, the primary amount of that is actually just market value and or reassessments based on market value. But there is 1 to 1.5% every year of new construction in the district. So even though it kind of seems as you're driving around that we are landlocked, but there's a lot of infill going on, and a lot of large lots being subdivided into 2 and 3 homes. So there's new construction to spread future levies on. This equity levy used to be over $1 million. Now it's down in the $868,000 level because the tiers 1, 2, and 3 apply if you're below the average 95th percentile of revenue per pupil. They each kind of kick in at different levels. And so we get the tier 4 amount of $50. Plus we get tier 1 and 2, but not much on tier 3. But we're at about $68.90 per pupil, so almost flat on that levy going forward. The individual amount went down per pupil by 4 cents, but because we have more pupils, the levy went up. Q-Comp is alternative teacher compensation is a technical name. I guess Q is stood for quality, and so that also is not increasing in a total dollar value amount. We get $260 per the October 1st estimated enrollment for 2025. We'll get that next year. And 35% of that is the $1,051,000 that you see on this slide. The total amount is $3 million. So the remaining $1.95 million actually is coming via state aid. And that's a fixed formula that 35% of total level has been and 65% state aid has been in place since the original Q-Comp program was initiated. Next levy is called operating capital, and it's to buy the stuff that we use in the district. it can buy anything, including technology, but now we buy more stuff out of the tech fund. But this buys everything from, books or whiteboards that are put it on the wall, or a lawnmower for the ground crew, just about anything that's stuff, other than the stuff inside of an Oreo. But we have about a $50,000 increase in there. This levy is actually been going up because the state used to pay for more of it. Back in fiscal 20, we only levied about 36% locally, and the rest, the other 64% was state aid. But the state, as they've been having more financial difficulty, they keep shifting a little bit more onto the local level, so it's up to almost 60% on this particular levy. And then our total revenue is about $2.9 million. So I only mentioned a two-tiered formula again because it's kind of the same old song as the really old song called The Same Old Song Says. But it's the $79 per adjusted pupil unit and the $109 times our age of the square footage of our building has been fixed since 2009. So it again loses out to inflation because inflation up there cumulatively is up over 50% since 2009. Our instructional facilities lease levy is a levy that we use to make bond payments on 13 individual certificate of participation bonds that we used to build instructional additions and grow the district. The drop in the levy is actually due to the refunding of our 2019 E-bonds that in September 24, so we have lower payments on the new bonds because we refunded at a lower rate. And every year we levy for what our total bonds are. It's capped at $212 per pupil. Our cap is $2,673,000. We don't levy up to the cap. You levy up to what you need to make your payments. So I list a number of things that we are paying for in terms of that we had bonded for: all-day kindergarten classrooms, numerous elementary classrooms and music rooms, middle school classrooms, high school classrooms and music rooms, the gymnasiums at Clear Springs, Groveland, and Scenic Heights, the Minnetonka Education Center, formerly known as TSP, and the Momentum Edition to the Pagel Center. So, and just as a FYI, unused capacity to support another bond issue if there was a project that we needed to do, about $2 million could be bonded with the remaining capacity if something came up. Debt service levy is on general obligation bonds is what we use to pay for bonds that are, actually this levy is 100% for long-term facility maintenance bonds that we've done over the years to keep up our 1.87 million square feet of space and 259 acres worth of facilities. The replacement value of all that is over $700 million if we were going to try to build it new. So it makes sense to just keep steadily putting in $4 to $5 per square foot a year into these facilities to keep them ready for the long term and kind of paying it forward from what we've been given by past generations who actually built the facilities in the first place. But keeping our facilities in good shape, make sure that they look kind of stately and important to set the tone that, hey, what happens inside of them is important, is important. And so we've got about $12.4 million worth of building bond payments on our general obligation bonds. It's up $1.4 million because we have a new payment that just came on for the 2025 D long-term facility maintenance bonds that we issued for next summer's long-term facility maintenance work. Ironically, not ironically, but just as a matter of time, I guess, the last payment on the 1996 building bond are going to be paid in February of 2026. We actually bonded for them last year and are collecting for that money this year, so it's there to pay in February. But that is actually the last payment from the very last building bond referendum that the school district ran on April 23rd of 1996. So just like a mortgage 30 years later, all those bonds are paid off, as will be the case with all the bonds that we issue. In prior years, we had some levy reductions that dropped our levy a little bit, and we don't have any levy reduction this year for what's called levy excess. We have to levy 105% of our bond payments every year for general obligation to make sure that if there are delinquencies, there's still enough money collected to actually make the bond payment. That 5% adds up over time, and as it gets to certain levels, there's a formula that is used, and you can utilize some of it to lower future levy payments. So I expect probably, since we didn't have one this year, it's probably more than likely next year we'll have a pretty significant levy, excess levy reduction to our next levy coming up a year from now. And then we have our other post-employment benefits debt service levy, $1.3 million. It's a decrease of $166,000 because we had, in this situation, our 5% additional levy built up over time a little bit, and so we have a $245,000 reduction. But we levied these, or we issued these bonds back in 2008, December 2008, to fund our post-employment benefits that were contracted with other employees who have retiree benefits for life. And so we were able to set up a trust fund and pay the dollars out of that. But trying to be good stewards, we actually initially, at that time, interest rates were at 6.83 and 6.24. We restructured down to 3%, and we structured them down again to 1.64% just to keep everything as flat as possible. This levy is flat at about $1.55 million annually, 105% of our about $146,000 payments. So those are the major levies that we have. We have this other list of 13 additional levy categories, plus then there's a equal number of adjustments. The ice arena levy is unique to 13 school districts in the state that actually own their own ice arena. Every other school district that has a hockey team actually plays in arenas that are either built by the city or the county and rent from them. But we own our own, so we can levy for operational costs over and above the revenue that's brought in. Our career and technical levy, that funds all kinds of the 35% of the programs for that are in Momentum, including everything over in the Momentum addition to PAGO, including the aviation program that we just started up last year and is continuing on. Of note, Intermediate District 287, there's about $200,000 in that $948,000 health and safety levy for 287, and then there's another approximately $500,000 for lease levy and another approximately $200,000 for safe schools. So about $900,000 of our levy, which is a little low, about 1.25%, is pass-through for our membership in Intermediate District 287 for special needs students that we send there when we deem appropriate to have their services delivered there. And then we also have community education levies and adult handicapped home visiting levies, smaller amounts. Of note, the community education, early childhood, school age levy, those related levies, they're only about 8% of community education, and they actually get about 92% of their revenue from fees for classes that they offer. So it's the most entrepreneurial of our funds. Well, I could say maybe nutrition services is giving them a run for their money now, though. So our total other levies are about $3.9 million, and that's about a $464,000 increase over the prior year. And then prior year adjustments are up $257,000, again, primarily because we actually have, including those prior year adjustments, are the $1.2 million that I mentioned as part of the general operating fund operating referendum and the local optional revenue one-time dollars. I included them above, but they're included in that $1.2 million. And so basically, they're the reason for the total dollar amount of the levy, and there's actually a bunch of offsets besides. So the net increase is $257,000. Just as an FYI, some other notes, we actually have, these are inflation adjustments that happened during the years when we had high inflation, and they provided significant one-time revenues in the subsequent year. And if you notice that, and so it was declining as inflation went down. This year, we're actually up a little bit because of $860,000, because with our enrollment growing, we have some operating referendum dollars coming in because of the increase in students that we have. So our total preliminary levy amount is about $73.9 million, just under $74 million. It's $3,821,000, and it's a 5.45% increase. Of that amount, about $1.9 million or 2.75% is due to enrollment increase and annual inflation increases in the operating referendum revenue. Another $320,000 or 0.46% is due to enrollment increases in the local optional revenue levy. So between those two, we're at about $2.3 million of the $3.8 million. So about 2/3 of it. $363,000 is due to an increase in the property value of the district for the capital projects levy. That's 0.52%. $268,000, 0.38% is due to an increase in intermediate 287 pass-through levies. And then about $940,000 or 1.34% is net. It's due to the increase of 1.4 million on the debt service levy, but then we have other levies that actually have net decreases of 543,000. So just summarizing them, that's how you walk up to 5.45%. So selected home value estimated tax impacts. These were the estimated tax impacts on these home values last year. 300,000, 500,000 is about the district median. 700,000 is not quite the district average. The district average is 772,000, but it falls right between these two. So you see the dollar increases of a $300,000 home would be $88 if they did not get reassessed, or if they did not do any modifications such as renovation and things that increase the value of their home. A taxpayer with a $300,000 home would see an $88 increase from this proposed levy, $147 annually at $500,000, $212 at $700,000, and $277 at $900,000. And we put just home values on here because we only have 251 commercial properties. Basically, about 92% of our property value in the district is residential homestead, and then residential non-homestead, which people who are residents of other states, but they basically have their second home here. And so a lot of those people are people who had their first home here, then became retirement residents elsewhere, and they still have their home. So about 92% basically is basically houses. Everything else, any apartment buildings, any senior living buildings, or any memory care facilities, all that kind of stuff, Targets, Maynards, all those types of properties are in that other 8%. So the other thing is the total property value in the district increased this past year by 3.2%. Again, some of that might be market value adjustment. Some of that, about probably 1.5% of that, is growth to the extent that it's the 1.5% of growth that helps to distribute this over more people and more properties. But I don't have that broken out because it's really hard to ascertain when you have 10 different cities. They may keep new construction figures, but they don't keep it by, like for instance, Minnetonka, and in particular, or Chanhassen, they don't keep construction figures by school district boundaries. They just keep city by city boundaries. So it's pretty hard to break out those types of things. So with that, that is the preliminary levy that is going to be proposed at the next session. We have to adopt a preliminary levy by September 30th and file it with Hennepin County and the Department of Education by September 30th. So the preliminary levy also then is the maximum amount that we can levy in a given year. You could always reduce the levy later and when we adopt the final levy, if you think it's appropriate. But this is where we set the maximum levy that we are looking at, and then any further decisions, again, would be made in the process of setting the final levy in December. Thank you. The other thing is I'm going to go through these slides again for the study session, which will be televised, but I will kind of modify it a little bit more and go through it a little bit quicker. So you've heard them all, but I'll still make sure that the 95% gets covered. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bourgeois. Board members, questions, comments? That's a lot. Thank you. All right. Going once, going twice. Thank you for that detailed information. All right, that is the conclusion of our study session agenda. We're going to take a very brief break, 5 minutes, and return for our special meeting. Everything's got to be different tonight. Okay. All right, we're going to call this special meeting of the Minnetonka School Board to order. We'll now stand to say the pledge to the flag, which is that way because it's outside. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Dan, may I have a second?
Second.
Mike, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have an agenda. Next item on our agenda is the certification of the 2025 paid 2026 preliminary levy superintendent law.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, as you'll remember just a few minutes ago, we preview, according to Minnesota statute, our preliminary levy has to be approved by the school board in order to be sent to the state by the 30th of September. This is the preliminary levy. It's set at the max amount. It can be adjusted down before it's formally approved in December and levied. Executive Director of Finance and Operations, Mr. Paul Bourgeois.
Thank you, Superintendent Law, Mr. Chair, members of the board. We just ground through every line item in detail of our overall levy in the study session just immediately before this. But for the community members scoring at home, we are going to go through some of the larger levies and then some of the tax impacts in this second review of this, and then ask you to certify the levy so that we can get it submitted and start the process of finalizing it in December. Our levy is made up of 9 major levy categories. And I will not read through these, but these levies, biggest one is operating referendum revenue, and the second biggest is local optional revenue. But those are all local, and these levies make up about 93% of the preliminary levy proposed. The prior year adjustments that we actually have in operating referendum and local optional revenue actually bring that percentage to 95%. So an understanding of these 9 items really gets a person in a ballpark and a solid understanding. Our operating referendum revenue is proposed to be at $29.5 million, which is an increase of $1.3 million. We are able to levy $2,340.76 per adjusted pupil unit, and that's a $74.45 increase from the prior year, about 2.37%. With an operating referendum adjustment that we're actually going to be making this year because of increased enrollment over initial estimates from last year, our total operating referendum revenue that we'll be utilizing for fiscal year 27 is $30,379,000. Local optional revenue is another levy that's based on a per pupil amount for every pupil in the district. It's pay 25 pay 26 is at $9 million, up $113 from fiscal year 25. The $724 is an important dollar amount. It has not been inflation adjusted since 2014, but it is still an important block of money that we get. Between local optional revenue of about $9.3 million, when you include the prior year adjustment that we're going to be doing this year, and the little over $30 million that we're looking at for the operating referendum, these 2 local funding sources fund about $40 million of our approximately $173 million revenue for operations, for instructional operations. Our technology referendum revenue is $10,412,000, which is a $363,000 increase from pay 25. The rate is 6.569% of net tax capacity. It's valued on, that's a calculation that is valued on every piece of property in the district. It's important to note that the market value of the district has gone up about 34% in 3 years based on the inflationary years and primarily of 2021 and 2022 and 2023. But values have gone up about 3.6% this year, so that's the primary reason for the increase that we have over last year's amount. Equity levy is a dollar amount of $68.86 per adjusted pupil, again, for every pupil that we have in the district. It's a complicated formula that's based on various calculations related to property value, related to certain demographic factors, so it's a nice dollar amount that's a nice complement to some additional funds that we get. Alternative teacher compensation, this is actually a $3 million total program, of which 35% is levied locally. The levy is $1,051,000, up $17,960 from last year. It's funded at, again, $260 per estimated October enrollment. The state makes up the difference between the $1,051,000 and the $3 million by state aid. Operating capital is a funding formula for revenue that we are allowed to use to buy things. We buy everything from whiteboards for classrooms to desks and chairs to lawnmowers for the grounds crew. The total revenue is about $2.9 million. Of that amount, $1.736 million is the local portion, and the remaining approximately 40% is state aid. So this is an increase of about $50,000, but it's a very important revenue source for us. Instructional facilities lease levy for 25 pay 26 at $2.496 million is bond payments on 13 individual bonds that we have issued over the years to build various classrooms across the district. All-day kindergarten classrooms, elementary classrooms and music rooms, middle school classrooms, high school classrooms and music rooms, Clear Springs, Groveland and Scenic Heights gyms, a Momentum Edition at Pagal, and the purchasing the Minnetonka Education Center, which is the former TSP building. So we are able to levy up to $212 per pupil, or whatever the amount is below that our bond payments are, and we're actually below our cap of about $2.673 million. Then we have a debt service levy for general obligation bonds, $12.457 million. It's an increase of $1.483 million. The primary reason for that increase is because we issued additional bonds to maintain our 1,870,000 square feet of space in the district, and with our long-term facility maintenance program. And that first bond payment is coming online with this levy. Then we have other post-employment benefits debt service levy of about $1.3 million, which is actually a decrease of $166,000 from the prior year. This is bond payments that were used to issue on bonds that were issued to establish a trust fund to pay post-employment benefits from various retiree health insurance obligations that were committed to by the district in contracts prior to 2002, and where people had benefits for life. So by having this trust fund, we're able to fund those payments out of there, and that way it doesn't take dollars away from classroom instruction. So this is basically, for the most part, it's flat. The reason it's down is because we're required to pick up an additional 5% on each bond payment in terms of additional levy in case there are delinquencies, and that builds up over time. And so there's actually a $245,000 usage of that extra 5% balance that is built up over the last several years to lower that. So we have numerous 13 other levies. I won't go through them individually. I always like to point out the ice arena levy, because we are one of 13 districts that actually owns its own ice arena and operates its own ice arena. Our total other levies then are about $3.9 million, which is a $464,000 increase over last year. We also have prior year levy adjustments of $1.2 million, up a little bit from $961,000 in 24 pay 25. And we've had other prior year levy adjustments that we were able to get additional revenue for the operating referendum because of inflation in prior years. This year we're picking up $860,000 in the operating referendum from prior year adjustments that'll actually go to help fiscal year 27. So our total levy is about $73,984,000. That's a $3,821,000 increase from 24-25. It's about a 5.45% increase. Of that amount, 2.75% or $1.9 million is due to enrollment increases and annual inflation increases in the operating referendum. $320,000 or 0.46% is due to enrollment increases in the local optional revenue levy. $363,000, about 0.52%, is due to the increase in the capital projects referendum technology levy. $268,000 or 0.38% is due to the increase in the intermediate district 287 pass-through levies for building leases and safe schools. And then $940,000 or 134% is due to an increase of $1.4 million that we mentioned for the debt service levy, but that's offset by all the ins and outs of the other levies, about $543,000. So that's how you get from 0 up to 5.45%. Selected home value impacts. These assume that a home value stays constant from the prior year. And so we have 300,000, 500,000, which is about the district median, 700,000, which is just below the district average, and then 900,000. And we only have residences on here because residences make up approximately 92% of the property value in our district. We don't have a big entity like a large corporate headquarters or large, like the super value warehouses or any of those type of large industrial things, or a Boston Scientific. We mainly have residences and a few other, about 251 commercial properties and other properties. So we're looking at a $300,000 home. The 5.45% increase would be about $88. That's on an annual basis. Of course, you would divide by 12 to get a monthly basis. $500,000 would be a $147 increase, $700,000 at $212, and $900,000 at $277. So it's important to note that total property values in the district increased 3.2%. A lot of that was because of reassessment, but we get 1 to 1.5% of new property values from new construction every year. And so to the extent that that has occurred, that would go to spread these levies on across more properties. So you'd end up with a person with the same home value would not be seeing a 5.45% increase. It might be slightly less than that. So with that, we would ask you to review or to approve the proposed motion. The proposed motion actually has a very important word in there that we're allowed to do under statute. It recommends that we approve the levy at the maximum amount authorized by statute, which is the $73 million, which is currently estimated at the $73 million figure. And that reason that's in there is because it's actually a hold harmless, because the state actually computes a lot of factors that go into our levy, and oftentimes they will make changes actually into October. So if there's a change into October that we need to have included in there, it would be included by having that, by adopting the maximum allowed by statute, which is, again, a terminology that actually is in statute and allows you to have that hold harmless. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bourgeois. Let's kick it off with a motion. Would someone like to make the recommended motion in our packet to certify the preliminary 2025 paid 2026 property tax levy?
So move.
Chris, may I have a second?
Second.
Mike. And just for the record, I'll read this motion. Resolution to certify preliminary 2025 paid 2026 property tax levy. Be it resolved that the School Board of Minnetonka Independent School District 276 does hereby certify the preliminary 2025 payable 2026 property tax levy at the maximum amount authorized by statute, which as of September 25th, 2025, totals $73,984,619.12, and authorizes administration to file the certified 2025 paid 2026 preliminary levy with the Hennepin County Auditor no later than September 30th, 2025. Any comments, questions, or discussion? We went through this in detail, as Mr. Bourgeois noted, in our study session. Thank you very much for the assistance. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bourgeois. All right, next item on the agenda, we have approval of election judges, Superintendent Law.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm thrilled to see such a robust slate of election judges. We are seeing a rebound in that area. Tonight, Executive Director of Finance and Operations, Mr. Bourgeois, will summarize the selection and approval of election judges. Mr. Bourgeois.
Thank you, Superintendent Law, Mr. Chair, and members of the board. Every 2 years, we actually run our own election because we run in off years. We run our own election for school board. And this year, we're also running a building bond referendum for the first time in almost 30 years. But the process of actually running the election is having had a daughter who got married, and we went through that process. It's kind of like setting everything up. It has to be perfect on the day. And I mean, I say that, it's a little bit I'm not kidding though. I mean, it's very similar. And so part of that is making sure that we have a good slate of election judges. And with COVID-19 the last several years, we had a hard time actually getting a strong slate. But this slate of election judges it's a deep bench, which is also good. But everybody's motivated and willing. And I've got to give kudos to our coordinator of procurement, insurance, and elections, Elizabeth Weibel, who is doing just a fantastic job in her first go around at this. And so she's going to be really good at it, and she's going to be really good at it for a long time, I think. So anyway, we just need you to approve the slate of election judges, and then we'll go about getting this election going. Thank you.
All right. We'll also kick this one off with a motion. So make the recommended motion to approve the election judges.
So moved.
Camry, you have a second?
Second.
Sally. This is a two-page motion, so I won't read this one for the record, but we have it in our packet. Any discussion, questions, comments? Seeing none? Oh, Dan?
I just want to say thank you to the folks who have signed up to be election judges. It's a critical part of the democratic process, facilitating these elections. That's how this board representing this community is staffed. And without these folks working to do this, I don't know what we do. So thank you so much.
Agreed. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you.
All right. That's the conclusion of our special meeting agenda. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Megan, may I have a second?
Second.
Mike. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned. All right, now.